Hello, sorry if things look weird. I will have it sorted next video. So as promised, today is going to be, if you watch my TBR video, today is going to be a different kind of video for me. I've noticed over the last, I want to say year and a half, probably closer to a year, but I backpedaled a little bit farther. Over the last year, I've noticed my taste shifting quite a bit, in subtle ways though, in ways that I still am drawn to a lot of the same books, but some of the books that I'm picking up are that I think should be perfect for me, it seems like it's right up my alley, is being a miss, and then it is a miss, like it's not working. And then other books that are way outside of my comfort zone that I normally wouldn't pick up naturally, but my patrons pick 2 books a month for me to read, and so I pick it up because of that, or it's a random recommendation from someone who just really wants me to try it. And then these books that are way outside my comfort zone that I normally wouldn't pick up, or that are maybe might work for me but seem like they shouldn't work, and then they do. These are the books that are oftentimes ending up being my favorite books. So it seems like in very subtle ways my taste is changing, but not in like such big ways that I'm like needing to revamp my reading entirely. So I figured it might be fun for me to go through the books that I've given 5 stars over the last like year and a half. I didn't pick every single one, but I picked a lot of them, and just kind of evaluate what are some common threads that I'm seeing, what are the things that are making these books not just great reads, but standout reads, reads that resound with me, that stick with me, that I want to keep finding that type of story, and just kind of see where that leaves me. So here's a quick look. These are the books that I pulled as in the last year and a half that these have been 5-star books that have really been standouts for me. And the first thing that I did when I looked at this list was to try to find some common things that sort of tied these books together as what made them so stand out for me, and what made me connect with them on a deeper level. Naturally, one thing that I've been honing in on lately is how much I love an atmospheric book, how much I love a book that really sinks me into the setting. It doesn't have to be something that's extraordinarily in-depth as far as the world building goes. Like, I don't need to know about the cultures and beliefs and unique ways that the different parts of the world interact with each other, though I'm not opposed to it, don't hear me wrong. But that's not a necessity for me. What is not a necessity, but what is something that draws me into books on a higher level is when the setting is very nature-based and it's very focused on creating that environment for me. So I'll be brief about this because I've talked about this a few times recently, and that's if we're in like a tropical jungle area or on an island or something like that, and the setting is a big piece of what's being interacted with and what's being honed in on in the prose. Or I found that I really love aggressive plant life, which seems so specific, but I do. I really love invasive plant life where it seems like it's taking over a setting. Or books that are very focused on seaside settings or being set at sea. I love nature, and so books where a lot of the appeal of the book is that it's grounded in that nature and draws me into it as well is really, really appealing to me. One thing that really surprised me and that I've been kind of mentioning here and there and tossing around and not really sure what to do with is that of the mysterious. Now, I don't enjoy reading mysteries, and this isn't me knocking the genre. There's a reason why it's so popular, you know, murder mysteries, cozy mysteries, all the things where we're trying to solve a crime. There's a reason people love it. I just don't. I can't really explain why. I've read plenty of Sherlock books. I've read Agatha Christie books. Like, I've had plenty of experience with mysteries, and there are mystery books that I've read that I've loved, like The Tainted Cup and The Wickwire Watch. There have been mysteries that I've really enjoyed, but it's not because we're solving a mystery, if that makes sense. But I have learned that I love the mysterious. And what I mean by that is when a book starts out by giving us not a ton of information. It's not overwhelming. It's a very intimate setting and perspective. Like, we're only focused on a few characters, but the world is being revealed and the setting is being revealed very slowly. I will give an example with a book that I'm currently reading, so it really shouldn't be on this list, but it's included because it should be a 5-star book, unless it just shoots itself in the foot at the end, and that's Clara and the Sun. There's something about the setting that we don't know about as far as I am into the book, which is 100 pages. The book talks about how the world used to be. People used to go out to eat at restaurants. People used to go to the movies together. There used to be a lot of businesses happening now, or happening around, but that's not how it is anymore. And they have these sort of meetings where they'll allude to things, but they don't outright say it. And the reason is because there's a lot of pain around it, and there's sort of a taboo about speaking directly about it because there's an implication. I don't want to say too much about this book. There's implications of the history of why everything has changed. And it doesn't feel like things are being withheld from me. It doesn't feel like, you know, these are clues to a mystery or someone's trying to mislead me or information is not being given because of some sort of plot device. Like, you know, this character almost told that character what's going on, but then they were interrupted at the last second or something like that. It just feels like no one wants to talk about what happened, and that's the reason it hasn't been revealed yet. And that's also true with certain things that are going on with the characters, and it's just a very, very slow, intimate story that's following these characters, and we're entering the story with Clara, and so we're figuring it out alongside of her, but she has to piece things together. It feels like a puzzle and less like a mystery. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I've experienced that with a few books lately, which seems nitpicky to separate that from a murder mystery, although they are distinctly different. But there is a difference to me between following clues and having red herrings and, you know, people are acting mysterious for like odd reasons and like I'm trying to solve the mystery alongside the detective, as opposed to the world is here and I'm trying to piece together what got the world this way and what put people in this position that they're in now. It's still a mystery, but in a more subtle way, and I've found that I'm engrossed in these stories. It's not trying to give me an entertaining read, it's trying to give me a subtle emotional read. And there's something about that. I feel like the way I said that sounds pretentious, and I really mean no pretension by it. It's just like I feel very, very drawn in by those stories. A couple other books that I felt that way were in Born, The Strange Bird, and Annihilation, where it was this very slow exploration of this world, and with that also came a slow explanation of the history and how it got here. And by the end of the books, I didn't feel like I had the full picture of the world. I didn't understand everything about the history, the culture, how it all got here, the ins and outs about everything about the world. I still had many, many questions by the end, but I didn't need them all answered because that's not what the book was doing. And I feel really drawn to that more subtle world building. And don't get me wrong, there are books on this list that have very, very exhaustive world building and that take me very far and wide, and I like that too, so don't say I'm saying one or the other. I'm just realizing how much I enjoy this type of storytelling that's not worried about being entertaining on every page, but there's a quiet beauty to it that draws me in and makes me need to engage with every detail because every detail seems to matter. Something also that I've recently realized about myself is I love the unique and the weird that is found in Vandermeer's stories, that's found in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Certain stories that are very unconventionally told and that are just very outside of the box of what typically is done within the genres. I find myself very, very drawn to these stories, not on their own, just because it's weird, I love it. It's not like that. But when stories are so strange but still so well told and so compelling, it like gives it an extra boost for me somehow. A couple of things that I already knew about myself and I didn't discover through this little project is that characters are very important to me. Stories that really intimately get me to know characters, whether it be, you know, like Clara and the Sun, where I have a small cast, or something like House of Open Wounds, where it's a very large, or Malazan, where it's a very large cast, but each each character seems to have their own individual personality, history, motivations, the way that they interact with the story, the way that they process the world and respond to it. They're their own living, breathing people. These things are very important to me as a reader, though they're not essential, because there are books on this list, like The Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, first book being The Three-Body Problem, that I would say don't ever lean heavily on their characters as one of the most important pieces of the story, and I still love the story. But characters are very, very important to me, and I am less likely to engage with a story if the character work isn't a focus of the author. But again, not the end all be all, because actually a lot of the classic sci-fi that I've been reading lately, like Solaris and Roadside Picnic, others that I can't think of right now, are not character focused, but the ideas had me so engaged that I still absolutely loved reading them. And then along with the character stuff, the character dynamics within each other is just as important, if not more important, than having a fully realized character. Found families, extreme loyalty, sacrificing for one another, the type of bonds that the characters display throughout the story is probably the most important part of me being really, really attached to characters. Okay, and then finally, one really common thread that I've noticed for myself, especially for the epics, like Dandelion Dynasty, Malazan, and The Remnants of Earth's Past, the ones that go really far, the ones that really follow a culture and a group and generations of people, and we see how the world is functioning and shifting and changing and responding to huge events. One thing that really, really ties me to these stories, as well as more soft and quiet stories like Clara and the Sun, or like A Letter from an Unknown Woman, Chess Story, or other Zweig books, Dawn, books like this that create a dynamic, that create a setting, a story, a situation that begs to be discussed. It doesn't have to be that, I mean, it can be that it's really themes rich and heavy, but it doesn't even have to be that. It could be something that's just very uncomfortable or anger inducing that I have to talk it out. It's something very evocative, something that really engages my emotions, and I don't have to be comfortable with it or agree with it, though it's great if I do. With or without that doesn't really matter to me. The point is that it's something that kind of burns inside of me, that I'm like, I have to discuss this and talk this out and work through this thing that's been presented. I've talked about this a bit before, but typically stories that are very on the nose, I love certain stories that are very on the nose, but usually it's stories that kind of draw me in and don't make a moral conclusion within the story itself, but just kind of put it all on the page and then leave it to me. Those are the books that I just turn over again and again in my head and need to discuss again and again and again. All right, let me pick this up because I feel like I've been here for a while. After I worked through some of these things, which was super helpful for me, just already I feel like I've learned so much about the things that I've been loving from the books that have been sticking with me the most. The next thing that I tried to do is to try to find the common things that people talk about loving in these books that I realized aren't super important to me. So a few things that I've noticed is that pacing doesn't seem to matter. Some of the books on my list are very fast-paced. Some of them are very slow plods. I find that I do love a beginning to a book that's very intimate and draws me in, not necessarily something that's really explosive or exciting or that's really grand and confusing. I like something that grounds me immediately and gets me attached immediately, and that's usually something to do with characters or something to do with mystery or emotions. But beyond that, pacing in a story, whether it's fast-paced, slow-paced, I don't oftentimes notice. I do notice if I'm bored, but that's usually based on other variables, not exclusively. It seems like the plot hasn't progressed in a while. If I'm engaged in the setting, in the characters, in the slow unraveling of things, of what's being built up, if I'm really engaged in the conflicts or the relationship dynamics, then I don't really care if we're moving at a fast pace this or not. Same with plot. I'm not saying plot doesn't matter to me, but plot is not one of the most important things to me, and it's usually not when I finish a book and want to talk about the book. I very rarely want to talk about plot beats. I usually want to talk about characters, what they went through, and what is being unpacked in the story. And a big point that I've recently been kind of figuring out how to articulate lately is that I don't need to like everything on page. Like, for instance, again, Zweig, who wrote A Letter to an Unknown Woman and Chess Story, but specifically A Letter to an Unknown Woman, this is a very terrible story. Like, it's a story of obsession, damaging, all-consuming obsession that controlled this woman's life, and the whole thing is just like watching a car crash happen. But because Zweig is such a talented writer, I also am so drawn into what's happening. It's so evocative that I can't stop reading it. And at the end, I'm not left with a feel-good story. I'm not left with a story that's really themes dense. I'm not left with a story that even had a satisfying conclusion. I'm just left with a story that made me feel a lot. Same with Dawn. Oh my goodness, what a great story that was. A very interesting plot, very interesting premise, beautifully written. Butler is a very talented writer, but I'm very uncomfortable with a lot of things that happen in this book. And like a lot, like the way Butler explores consent in many of her books is very uncomfortable. And she certainly leaves the reader with having to work through how they feel about it too. But while there are certain topics that I don't want to dig deeply into, certain, like I don't want to watch child abuse happen on page. If it's going to happen a lot, it takes a toll on me. So certain topics I will veer away from. I will veer away from a lot of it being explicitly on page, but I've found that a lot of the books that ring in my mind the strongest, some of them are not books that feel cozy or that you leave and you're like, oh, something productive happened here. It might not have been productive, but it still accomplished what it was looking to accomplish. See, I still don't feel like I'm actually verbalizing this well. Help me out if you understand me. You might not. I'm not sure I'm expressing it well. And then I've also found that while I love a world that's really fleshed out, I love a world that's really detailed and that feels really well realized, and like the culture and the practices and the political dynamics, all of that is really well explored. Again, I'll point to the Dandelion Dynasty, Stormlight Archive, like many series where the world is a big deal, a big part of the writing into it. While I love that in a story that has many other components that I love, that thing will never make what makes a story great for me. It's going to be the other components that I brought up before. One thing that I've come away from with this video, and it's something that I've kind of been tiptoeing around noticing, trying to put my finger on for a while here, is that something that I've been loving about, while I've been very drawn to sci-fi and fantasy lately, something that has been making certain stories stand out to me more than others is the ones that are either like very weird and different, still have factors in it that traditionally make me love it, but this is just outside of the box, just something really different, or something that has a particularly strong emotional edge, like really grounds me and connects me with some sort of theme or topic or character exploration, character arc that's very intimate and personal and emotionally charged that makes it stand out. Another thing that I've pulled away from this is that maybe I need to, while I've been leaning into my fantasy and sci-fi kick lately, and I don't want to stop doing that, I think I need to carve out more time for literary fiction novels and nonfiction novels, because those oftentimes do a lot of the things that make stories really stand out for me. And on top of that, kind of reinforcing how strongly I want to lean into authors that are providing exactly what I'm looking for. I have been leaning into Vandermeer and Tchaikovsky, but I really need to be leaning in more heavily, putting more emphasis on leaning into Zweig, possibly more Ishiguro. I oftentimes am too quick to do this, to say something really positive about a book, about an author when I've read one of their books and it's been a big hit, but I feel like Ishiguro is going to be an author that I'm going to want to pursue, as well as authors like Butler and Liu, which Octavia E. Butler, I've already read several of her books, and Kin Liu, I've already read, obviously, the Dandelion Dynasty, as well as a collection of his short stories, but I could do more exploring for them. So I think what this video has done is it's definitely helped me to put better, although still not perfectly, into words some of the things that I've been feeling lately, as well as help me to explore certain things that I hadn't actually put my thumb on yet. But as far as things that I can put into effect immediately, is it has really kicked me into leaning more heavily into the authors that have really proven themselves to be authors that I love and that are continuously hits for me, even more so than I already have been doing. I didn't put a huge amount of emphasis on books that I reread this year, like The Gentleman Bastards and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I didn't put a huge amount of emphasis on those ones because I've explored those books so aggressively already, nor did I put a huge emphasis on series that I'm already ongoing and already, you know, being proactive about reading through in a timely manner. Timely is subjective when we're talking about Malazan, but I think we already explored that I need breaks with Malazan, though I am feeling that itch for the next book, so that'll probably be started soon. Anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling. If this video was interesting to you, if you made it to the end, thanks. Maybe this will have encouraged you to look at some of your 5 stars and see what that means for you. I think it's been productive for me. I'm glad I did it. Will it have made an interesting video? Only you can tell, but I'm glad I did this. Please do chat with me more about it in the comments if you want to. I'll see you again soon. Bye.